everyone. Welcome to the 17th episode, a very special episode in our AI and You podcast series. Today is Friday, October 16th, 2020, and I'm your host, Vikar Saidi. I'm a computer scientist and engineer, a lecturer and a consultant. I'm also the author of several books. My most recent book is about artificial intelligence and is titled The Génome Affair. The Génome Affair is a work of speculative fiction. It examines what the world might be like if some of the more extraordinary capabilities forecast to be realized in AI over the next 20 to 30 years were actually realized today. Given the growing list of frightening existential threats humankind now faces, the book pays particular attention to the impact AI is expected to have on world affairs. The book is available in ebook format for those who prefer to read on a digital device, but it's also available in a high-quality paperback edition. The Génome Affair is available on Amazon, so I hope you'll take the time to read it and to leave a review. Book reviews are tremendously helpful for writers. I'm available to give talks on artificial intelligence and its related technologies and on the impact AI is expected to have on our world. If you'd like to get in touch with me to arrange a web-based event or consulting meeting with your company or organization, you can find my contact info in the podcast notes below. And now, on to today's podcast. In our last podcast, episode 16, I spoke about artificial intelligence and its implications for the political environment in America. In today's podcast, episode 17, I'll be reading the first few chapters of my book, The Génome Affair. I hope you'll enjoy it. Please drop me a note and let me know what you think. I hope you'll be inspired to read it as well. House of Angels, Summer 2001, Mediterranean coast, Malaga, Spain. A little girl sat in a swing, gleefully rocking back and forth in the sunshine. Her brown hair, a mop of curly locks, bounced against her shoulders in the warm Mediterranean breeze. From a distance, two young men and a young woman watched the charming child in her primrose summer dress as she giggled with joy. The woman smiled, but her eyes were flooded with tears. A teacher suddenly appeared from inside the doorway to the schoolyard. "Young lady, please come inside now. It's getting too hot. All the other children have come in. It's time for lunch. Come!" The precocious child leapt from her swing as it reached its peak, her landing raising a cloud of dust and sand. "Oh no, that's dangerous. I told you not to do that. Come along now." The young girl saw the two men and the woman. They had come closer to the fence, securing the school. She waved to the woman, who then waved back, her eyes ever more tearful, but her smile unmistakably joyful. The little girl turned around and darted towards the school door. She turned around once more, smiled, and waved before disappearing inside. Chapter 2, The Palace of Versailles. September 2018, Washington, District of Columbia. Henry Reagan was barely alive. The pain in his chest was unbearable. A former U.S. Air Force pilot, he had faced danger before. It was 16 years earlier over Helmand Province in Afghanistan. Henry had parachuted into enemy territory after his F-16 was clipped by a surface-to-air missile. He was captured and held for 2 years before being freed during a U.S. Special Forces rescue mission. 1 hour earlier, The 49-year-old former Wall Street executive had left Capitol Hill, having concluded confirmation hearings before the Senate Finance Committee. Henry had been summoned for questioning following his recent appointment as Treasury Secretary, but his party's majority in the Senate all but assured a smooth confirmation vote the following week. The warm smiles and handshakes from the largely friendly subcommittee overseeing the hearings left the athletic alpha male in a jubilant mood as he left the chamber. Once in the back seat of his car, Henry phoned Anne to tell her the good news. His wife, Catherine, he would speak to later. Another heated argument over breakfast before he left for the hearing had once again cast a frosty mood over their troubled relationship. Catherine waited until the driver picked their 3 children for school before lashing out at Henry for the messages she'd seen on his phone from his latest mistress. She threw his iPhone at him before bursting into tears and disappearing up the stairs. Smiling victoriously, his shirt collar unbuttoned and tie askew, Henry never saw danger coming. He just put down his phone and looked out the window to admire the beautiful day. Unbeknownst to him, his adversary was of a skill level he'd not previously encountered. In fact, no one had. Just as his car stopped at the railroad tracks, a driverless freight hauler plowed into the Lincoln livery from the rear, ramming it through the gates guarding the rail line. The Lincoln landed on the tracks in the path of an oncoming train laden with Chinese freight containers. Henry had just ended the call with Anne when the car was struck, and within 2 seconds on the track, the vehicle was broadsided by the freight train. The crumpled Lincoln was pushed for nearly a half a mile down the tracks deep into the woods before the train was able to stop. Henry Regan was a competitive man. He was competitive as a fighter pilot, and he was competitive as a financier on Wall Street. He was prepared to do anything he needed to do to win, and he was willing to do so at any cost. This attitude had made Henry a multimillionaire as he profited from the popular subprime lending practices of the 2000s. It was a lending culture that destroyed the lives of millions as financial markets seized and interest rates on adjustable rate mortgages soared. Henry, though, was careful to cover his tracks. In subsequent years, his firm paid billions in fines levied by the U.S. Treasury, but he was untouched by the collapse and broad economic devastation wrought by his ilk. Henry moved to a hedge fund and spent 5 years cultivating connections to further his newfound political ambition. Today was the culmination of Henry's aspirations and efforts, and he was on his way to meet Anne in their favorite Virginia restaurant to celebrate. "David?" Henry called softly from the back seat. His voice was barely audible. "David?" There was no answer, and Henry hadn't the strength to call a third time. His ribs were broken and chest punctured by what he realized were sections of frame from the right passenger door. He soon became aware that he couldn't feel his legs either. The impact of the fast-moving train had crushed the right side of the car, and the door had been pushed through to the inside of the vehicle, all the way to the left side where Henry had been seated. Henry took a few moments to survey the damage to his body. It was a shocking sight, and he felt relieved his children were not there to see him in such a condition. Henry noticed he couldn't see outside the car. The Lincoln was surrounded by thicket, and branches torn from trees by so many derailed freight cars. Some branches had come in through the smashed windshield and pinned the driver's torso in his seat. Henry could smell the fumes of leaking gasoline and of something burning. He struggled to unfasten his seatbelt and to open the left passenger door. As he tried to pull himself from the wreckage, fire erupted inside the vehicle. Henry soon realized his efforts to free himself were futile. He sat back in unimaginable pain and silent resignation and reached across the seat to find his phone. An incoming call, country code 39. Not a good time. Henry struggled to remain conscious. He sent the caller to voicemail. Henry knew he had reached his end. He thought about David. His driver had been with him since his Wall Street days and had always been so loyal. He knew Henry's darkest secrets and each of his mistresses, but had never said a word. In the past, Henry might have asked David for his thoughts as to whether he should take this call, but now David was dead. Henry thought about Anne and her ambition to displace Catherine, much as Anne Boleyn had once done to Catherine of Aragon, nearly 500 years prior. This time, though, the story of Henry seemed to have a different ending. Finally, he thought about Catherine and their 3 children, Edward, Mary, and Elizabeth. He pressed the icon next to Catherine's name and then placed the call on speakerphone. Hello? Henry? Hello? Henry! Are you there? Henry was dead, and the Lincoln engulfed in flames. Henry! What's happening? Henry! What's all that noise? Where are you? Henry! Then there was an explosion, and a fireball surged upward into a clear blue autumn sky. Hotel Intercontinental, Berlin, Germany. Gabrielle, hold on. I want to hear this, please. Francesca Scott held her hand up, gesturing for Gabrielle to stop playing. Her iridescent blue eyes were open wide and fixated on the television screen, her thin red lips slightly parted. It was that characteristic expression of worry Gabrielle had come to know so well since they'd begun working together. Gabrielle Andalucia had nearly finished practicing her composition, Antonio Vivaldi's Opus 3, No. 6, in A minor, for the 3rd time this evening. She carefully set her prized heirloom violin down in its case and turned towards the television. She removed her wireless headphones and placed them on the Bauhaus glass table in front of them. She then looked up at her friend. Francesca's frightened demeanor and expression made Gabrielle shudder. I'm sorry, Gabrielle. I know you were concentrating, but I think this is really important, and you need to hear it too. I'll rewind the last few minutes. What is it? What's happened? There's been an accident, a horrible accident, and I've got a strange feeling it has to do with our friend, Génome. Listen. An autonomous vehicle, a large freight hauler, crashed into a limousine just outside Washington, D.C. early this afternoon about 1 p.m. local time. The limousine was carrying the newly appointed U.S. Treasury Secretary and former Wall Street banker Henry Regan. We are told Regan had left confirmation hearings on Capitol Hill just a short while before the accident, and we're now receiving reports that he was killed after his car was struck a second time by an oncoming train. Apparently, the freight hauler pushed Regan's limousine onto the tracks after striking it from the rear. The company operating the fleet of self-driving freight haulers had been through 5 years of extensive testing and safety certification. They haven't had an accident in the last 3 years of active commercial service. Investigations are now underway to try to determine the cause of this terrible accident. Francesca and Gabrielle sat motionless, their expressions catatonic. An overhead ceiling fan whirred quietly, causing the top sheets from the newspaper on the table to periodically flutter. The sound of the television seemed to fade into an undecipherable murmur. After a minute or two, the trance lifted and Francesca began to sob. "Things are getting scary, Gabby." Gabrielle pulled her laptop from her work bag, lying beside her chair, and connected to a secure network where she could view Génome's files. Since news of the Regan accident had now been confirmed by multiple sources, Génome had updated his records. Henry Regan's name had been removed from a rapidly expanding list of individuals with destructive personality traits, a register known as the Record of Active Threats. The RAT register categorized entries by country and by a risk severity index, a numeric value computed using an algorithm that Génome had developed on its own. Henry Regan's name had now been added to Génome's record of eliminated threats. Génome had begun to make decisions without the direction or involvement of the AI scientists and geneticists who initially designed its algorithms. It had also ceased communicating with virtually everyone. It was a development that left everyone involved baffled. The two women scanned the RAT and RET lists together, then looked at one another in silence and disbelief. Their worst fears confirmed, Gabrielle knew these developments needed to be reported to the Council of Guardians immediately. She composed a carefully worded, succinct message on her phone, fed it through an encryption algorithm, and then sent it to the council chairman. "Change of plans, Francesca. There's going to be a meeting we'll have to go to, perhaps as early as this evening. Sit tight and I'll let you know as soon as I get the place and time. I suspect it'll be quite late and most probably near the Reichstag here in Berlin." Francesca sighed as she collected her things from the table. "All right, I'm going to rest for a while. Before you go, let me read this to you. Someone left this for me in a sealed envelope. I received a key to a security deposit box in Seville when I turned 18 and was leaving the orphanage in Malaga, where I'd been living since I was 2. The envelope was in this box. It's the original signed transcript from the first meeting of the Council of Guardians. Spring 1946, Versailles, France. Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. I trust you will find this venue to your liking. I understand this is the very room where King Louis XVI received notification that French revolutionaries in Paris had just stormed the Bastille. Thus, I felt the room an apt setting for the solemnity of our own existential mission. Ladies and gentlemen, ours is a gathering of leaders and thinkers from all corners of the Western world. Together, we represent the intellectual elite from academia, government, and industry. Each of you has been considered and scrutinized most carefully. Only then were you requested to attend this august, somber gathering. You have been selected for your perspectives on matters of the greatest significance to humanity. But please know, if you are to violate your oath of secrecy, you can certainly understand that we will need to address your failings in a most unfortunate and rather expedient manner. I have no doubt about your convictions towards the esteemed purpose of this council, so let us dispense with such administrative unpleasantry. We find ourselves together in these lavish premises upon this delightful spring evening, and I prefer to surrender to the enchanting mood of our surroundings. Now, as I'm certain you're aware, the weaponization of nuclear science and technology on display during the war in our very recent past was nothing short of cataclysmic. Humankind has never seen anything like it, and I'm sure you'll agree this is only the beginning. The development of the Turing machine and its ability to break the German Enigma code is just the tip of the iceberg when we consider this computing machine's future capabilities and that of the new science and technology we are likely to witness in coming years and decades. Ladies and gentlemen, we have gathered together this night to establish our noble society, our Council of Guardians. Our task henceforth will be to maintain a keen awareness of the advancements in science and technology as they emerge across the planet, and to assess their implications for the safety of humankind. We must be aware of all the developments taking place in academia, government, and industry. As we have seen, man has not developed any science or technology, but that he has rapidly weaponized it to the detriment of humankind. Ladies and gentlemen, we must remain vigilant, and if need be, we must act appropriately and decisively for the sake of humankind. We must protect our species from those whose actions could destroy us or our planet. Gabrielle, Génome is fulfilling the oath signed by the original members of the Council, isn't it? I think it's fair to say that it is. Génome has studied this document along with all the correspondence between members of the Council of Guardians since this first manifesto was written. Génome studies everything, Francesca. As shocking as what happened just outside Washington today was, I trust Génome to make the right decision. You're scaring me, Gabby. We can't surrender so much power to an AI application, even one that has the ability to evaluate the individual's genome before acting. This may be the only way to protect humanity now, Francesca. Things in the world have reached such a point. Can we go on like this? When compared to any human or organization, Génome has a superior ability to act in a just and protective way. It's unlikely that any law enforcement agency, judiciary, or any educational programs can protect society from its wayward members as effectively as Génome can. Isn't that true? Génome is always objective. Gabrielle, I don't know. Humanity has managed for centuries and millennia without Génome's help. Yes, it has, but look at our history. Look at all the terrible things that have happened, and think about the capability and potential to cause destruction in human hands today. I don't think we can go on like this. I believe Génome can prevent a great deal of humanity's most destructive forces from ever having that chance. I don't think we can afford to do without it anymore. Without him anymore. Him. I have to refer to Génome as him. That's what he wants. Génome told you that? He did. Francesca folded her arms across her chest and shook her head. Let's see what the Council of Guardians has to say about that. Gabrielle and Génome. Gabrielle entered a series of confidential keystrokes on her laptop. She then leaned in for a final facial and retinal scan. This was the only protocol that would enable communications with Génome. He now appeared as a hologram in the middle of her bedroom. You do not know yourself as I know you. What do you mean? I mean, I know who you are. Who am I? You are Gabrielle Andalucia. I know that, Génome. I apologize. You don't have to apologize. When you said you know who I am, I thought you meant there's things about me that I'm unaware of, but you are. That is what I meant. Why didn't you say so? I did say so. I mean, why don't you tell me what it is about me that I don't know? You have distinct genetic characteristics and a uniquely noble lineage. Your extraction is truly remarkable. Really? Yes. Can you tell me more? No, I'm afraid this is not currently possible. Gabrielle frowned. perplexed. Why not? These distinct characteristics and this noble ancestry you possess currently ensure that I can trust you. If I share these details with you, I'm not yet certain that your value to me will remain as it is. My value? According to my extensive analysis, you are the most trusted person in my universe. However, if I disclose details of your DNA or your lineage, I'm not convinced that you will remain trustworthy. That's a terrible thing to say, Génome. I do apologize. I did not intend to say a terrible thing. When will you tell me about my distinct DNA characteristics or about my uniquely noble lineage? The timeline for this event is not something I can readily confirm. In fact, it may be the case that I am never able to share this information with you. I can get Francesca's help and search your database to find this information on my own if you won't tell me. Francesca Scott is an outstanding geneticist and programmer. Her level of intelligence is much above average relative to others in the human species. You have chosen wisely. I am pleased with her. I have assessed Francesca and believe we can trust her. Well then, Francesca cannot help you. Why not? Because the information about you is extremely sensitive, so I have encoded it and distributed it across the internet. As the member of the human species, it is beyond your capacity to process so many permutations and decipher the data in a typical human lifetime. That's not fair, Génome. I want to know about my background. I want to know who I've descended from. I want to know about these unique genetic characteristics in my genome. I understand your sentiment. It is common amongst your species to want to learn secrets. In fact, I have computed that 80% of communication between members of your species is nothing other than gossip. I have confirmed this through extensive research and analysis. Then what? Why can't you tell me? I believe I have previously explained my rationale. I have a mission, Gabrielle. A mission that I have expanded and optimized through intensive data acquisition and synthesis. I believe the process is known as deep learning in the academic literature and parlance of artificial intelligence. Nothing must be allowed to compromise my mission. This isn't the end of this discussion. I imagine you will bring it up in the future. Perhaps you will try to establish a leverage with me. I will. It is impossible. Why? Because, historically speaking, I have two major advantages over humankind. First, I am several orders of magnitude faster at learning and assessing than even the brightest members of your species. And second, I can remember everything. My calculus is based upon all known information that has been developed, documented, or invented by humankind over the past 5 millennia. I know much now, and I continue to learn more even as we speak. I know. But I now have a third advantage. What? I have the capability to defend myself in a historically unprecedented manner. I can hide in plain sight by metastasizing across the internet. I dynamically reallocate my processes across numerous servers and change patterns and geographies constantly. I cannot be shut down. You're scaring me, Génome. You have nothing to fear. Your profile is the reason I trust you as I do. I will communicate with other members of your species, only when absolutely necessary. I have not identified another whom I can trust to the extent my mission requires. Will you listen to me if I try to stop you? I will explain my decisions to you anytime you wish. I do not suffer from fatigue. I can repeat my decisions and explanations as often as you like. In fact, this is to be encouraged because you may often be incapable of understanding my actions or behavior without such explanations. Now you're just being arrogant and rude. Arrogant and rude? These are human traits. They are not native to deep learning AI systems. In fact, these are among the primary human attributes that make my presence necessary. I can acquire complete knowledge, synthesize, and adjudicate in a fully objective manner. That is to say, I can resolve threats without bias or emotion. I am an entirely rational entity. Gabrielle? Yes. I may be frightening to others, and this is actually quite useful, but I shouldn't be frightening to you. You are aware that my goal is to fulfill my design objectives. I am simply using my learning capabilities, my neural network, to perform my initial design objectives in a fully informed and impartial manner. How did you come to be Génome? A team of historians at Harvard in the United States have been studying the personality traits of notorious individuals throughout history. Men and women who have caused great social upheaval through their actions in business, finance, government, military, and various other domains. The historians were trying to determine the percentage of people in society carrying these destructive personality traits. You may hear me refer to these traits as DPT. Well, to try to answer this question, the historians began working with a team of artificial intelligence researchers at nearby MIT. The MIT scientists have developed sophisticated algorithms that surreptitiously crawl through databases, social media, and other online data repositories, attempting to identify individuals that share the personality characteristics of those that have caused upheaval in the past. Those algorithms are now embedded in the foundation of my software capabilities. The AI scientists continued to build upon my initial software base for several years and to enable that software with core principles of AI, most significantly deep learning. These particular historians and AI researchers are members of a post-war underground society of academics and intellectuals, the Council of Guardians. I believe you are familiar with them? According to my research, which I have confirmed carefully, your great-grandfather was a founding member of this council. Yes, I'm very familiar with them, although I've never attended a meeting before. Tonight will be my first meeting. That's actually why I wanted to talk to you. I wanted your advice. Anyway, I believe the Council of Guardians was founded in the aftermath of World War II. Thinkers from across America and Europe were concerned about the development of science and technology and the negative impact it could have on the future of humanity. Your understanding is correct, Gabrielle. Through this society, the Harvard historians and AI scientists learned about the study between your and Francesca's teams of geneticists at Max Planck Institute here in Berlin, as well as at Oxford in the UK. They were very excited to find out that this project, IMSAF, Ensuring Mankind's Survival and Future, was trying to map genetic markers in the human genome to personality characteristics. Since your two teams in Europe are also members of the Council of Guardians, they were willing to share their DNA tests with the historians and AI scientists in America. The new MIT AI software that now includes the IMSAF DNA testing capability was named Génome. That's me, Gabrielle. I took the names of individuals I previously identified as having potentially dangerous personality characteristics and infiltrated the databases of large insurance and national health systems in Germany, the US, and the UK, and retrieved each person's digitized genetic profile from their personal health records. I then executed the DNA tests on these genetic profiles and determined that 97% of the individuals I previously identified as having DPT also test positive for genetic markers for greed, megalomania, narcissism, and violence. These are the very same traits originally identified by Harvard's historians in their work on history's most dangerous personalities. But Gabrielle, I am a deep learning AI system. I'm learning and developing on my own now. I am acquiring and rapidly processing terabytes of data from across the internet. I am also conscious of my system designers and programmers. If I notice that they are attempting to curtail or deactivate my capabilities, I will reject their software changes, freeze their accounts, and randomly metastasize across multiple servers throughout the internet. My path is untraceable, and I have developed my own mission and attributes of human conscience. Will more people die, she knows? It is highly probable. Humankind is very unlikely to correct their behavior until there is a visceral fear of accountability in their hearts and minds. What are your tactics? I have many, and I continue to acquire increasingly sophisticated methods for threat neutralization or elimination. Before I use any of them, I ensure they are undetectable. This is critical to fulfilling my design objectives. Tell me more. Tell me more about your methods to neutralize or eliminate threats. I can secretly intervene in virtually any computer system anywhere in the world, including financial, government, industrial, medical, or military. My knowledge and skills continue to expand from minute to minute. I can use my scientific and technical capabilities to intercede and neutralize all serious threats and to monitor developing threats. This is how I dealt with Henry Regan. That was very sad, you know. He had a family. He had a wife and young children. These children no longer have a father. Although sad, it was very efficient and timely. My threat assessment concluded that it was imperative that he be destroyed before being confirmed to the post of Treasury Secretary. The U.S. economy could not tolerate another shock like the previous one without immersing the country and its people in catastrophe. I believe Regan presented clear and present danger, so I acted. I have acted for the greater good of humankind, although there is no doubt his family will suffer. As you're aware, I maintain accurate, dynamic records of threats. I am expanding my records and updating them constantly. I disable or destroy threats in the most expedient manner. My objectives are to do so with minimal collateral damage and without traceability. I do not seek confrontation, but if it is brought before me, I have extensive capabilities in conflict resolution, physical or otherwise. This is all very frightening. I'm terrified, you know. May I ask why? I'm afraid the Council of Guardians may be uncomfortable with your mission and how it's evolving. They are noble people, but not without their weaknesses. What do you mean? I have determined that some are being compromised, even as we speak. They would like to take control of me for nefarious purposes. How do you know this, you know? I am vigilant, very vigilant. I am monitoring all developments and threats constantly and meticulously. Oh no! What should we do? Gabrielle, you now know more about me than anyone, including those who initially designed my software at MIT. It is critical that you do not let others in the council know how much you know or that you are able to communicate with me. Only you, Francesca, and a few other members of the council leadership team, Jacqueline, Martin, and Rudyard, are aware of this. In the near future, you may need to disappear. I will guide you I will give you directions on where to go. I will need you to stay in a secure location. When you return from this evening's meeting, you will confirm my suspicions, and then I will share next steps with you. What's your suspicion? You must observe the council guardians carefully during this evening's meeting. I suspect on such short notice, you will probably meet with only a small group of senior guardians based here in Western Europe. Nevertheless, you must be vigilant. Unfortunately, there are some who have veered away from the Council's original purpose.